Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. This week we will be covering Kingdom Keepers Book 7, The Insider. If you guys have been enjoying this content, please do not forget, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you guys do not miss a video. If you're new to the channel or you missed my last video for my Dark Passage review, I will leave a link to that, as well as a link to the Kingdom Keepers playlist if you guys want to rewatch all my Kingdom Keepers videos. As always, in the comments, if you guys have any book reviews you want me to do in the future, please do not be afraid to drop those down there. As always, format for the book review: summary of the story, pros, cons, and then my final thought and ranking. With all that out of the way, let's hit the intro. So, 3 years have passed by. The Kingdom Keepers have not had any real Overtaker activity. They've been more or less gone back to their lives and everything's completely hunky-dory. Until one day, Tea Dalma is able to get out of the cave from Dark Passage and is able to free Chernabog and the Evil Queen. The three of them slowly start making their way back to Anaheim, California for their big master plan to destroy the parks once and for all. The Kingdom Keepers must once again be called back into action to prevent that from happening. Alright guys, so starting off the pro list here is the fact that we finally get POVs for the Overtakers. So I actually think this is a genius idea on Ridley's part because we actually get to see a different perspective than just the Keepers been inside their heads forever for the entire series. So it's a good change of pace from the Keepers to the Overtakers. And we get their sort of ideology and their reasons for why they wanted to be in the Overtakers. It's, like I said, a good change of pace. I feel like it was time for the change from following the Keepers to going into the Overtakers' heads. The only thing that I feel like could have been better, and I'll get to this in my cons section a little more, is that we're only following the Overtakers for like the first half or so of the book, and then they just kind of fall out and we don't get anything more from them. So I wish we had gotten a little more from them, and I'll cover that in my cons section. Pro number 2 is we are finally back to the Disney parks. Don't get me wrong, I did like the novelty of having the last 2 books take place on a cruise ship, but as I said in my Dark Passage review, it kind of lost its appeal after a while because, like I said in that review in my cons section, they're so limited and they can only do so much. So I feel like it's really much better that they are back in the parks and back doing what the original concept of the entire series was in the first place, which is, you know, going to the Disney parks at night and fighting the Disney villains. So I feel like we'd finally gotten back to that concept with this book, and I am all for it. I am so much more happy that we are back in the parks doing what the series promised in the first place. Because being at the parks gives Ridley Pearson so much more freedom to, you know, have the Keepers be doing different things in different places. Whereas on the cruise ship, they can't go a whole lot of places without, like, running into the Overtakers or getting spotted by the security. So it's much better that they are back at the parks and they are able to have a much freer hand in doing what they have to do. And I really appreciate that we are back to, like what I said, the original series concept was. Pro number 3 is just how emotionally raw Wayne's death was in this book. His death is a lot more brutal for a Disney. Normally, Disney deaths you just kind of have to die off screen, but with Wayne, they are full on, like, they see him die. And it is just emotionally scarring for both us and the Keepers themselves, because Wayne had been their mentor forever, and he had, like, grown to become a father figure for Finn, and he takes it the hardest. Because we spend the most time in Finn's head, we just see how emotionally affected Wayne's death makes him, and he just shatters. He almost kills Cruella de Vil pretty soon after this, and it is just emotionally scarring for both us, Finn, and the other Keepers in general. So one thing I'm gonna touch on really quick about Wayne's death is how it affects everyone else. Because we're in Finn's head most of the time, he seems to get like most of the emotional turmoil from his death. And it makes sense. Obviously, those two were the closest. Wayne's death would have affected Finn the most. But I feel like the problem with having this group relatively large is we don't get a whole lot of time with everyone. We're either in Finn's head or we're in Philby's head. He gets a lot of screen time over the books. And I'll talk about Philby in a minute. But like I said, the problem with having this group as large is we don't really get to see the emotional impact on the others, just mainly Finn, which is fine. But I feel like if Ridley Pearson had wanted this death to affect even more people, we should have gotten everyone's reaction to his death in a larger segment. There was that funeral scene in the book, but what I really wanted him to do was go through each of the characters' heads and just let them pour out their emotions to Wayne's death. I know the book is on a time crunch, so I understand why Ridley Pearson had to just mainly focus on Finn and his emotional just turmoil from Wayne's death. So for the fourth pro, I am actually going to put Philby on this list. So I particularly really like how Philby is used in this book because he's probably the one who gets the second most screen time out of the characters in this book. And I feel like that time is very, very well used because we get to delve deeper into Philby's head. And there's one part I really like. After Finn and Philby have had their argument about the leadership thing, we get this little diatribe in Philby's head where he's battling with himself, like, do I want to be the hero and save the day or be a team player? And it's this battle between Philby, like, do I want to really become the leader of the Keepers or do I want to be a team player? And I feel like they had been building up this psychological battle for a few books, and I feel like this is when it really kind of comes to a head. And I feel like Ridley Pearson really found a good use for Philby in this book. Finn's second in command and the unappreciated genius, but as he starts getting favored by Wayne, Philby starts feeling his britches a little bit, and he's trying to push Finn back as the leader and take that position. And he's psychologically battling with himself, like, is this really something I want to do? And I feel like it is a really great idea for Ridley Pearson to do that for Philby. For the final pro is the ending of this book. So after final battle with Disney, the Keepers actually end up finding another clue of Wayne's. And I'm not going to spoil this because I will eventually cover all these return books. But it is a really good setup for what happens next. And I am all for this series continuing. And I hope you really enjoyed this series because it really does get better from here. Alright guys, so starting off the con section, we have the one con I mentioned earlier, and that is the fact that I don't think we got enough time with the Overtakers. So the reason I said this is I find the villain side of this a bit more interesting sometimes, because when we're following the Overtakers, we kind of hear their ideology, but we never get a sort of solid understanding of who they are. I mean, we don't necessarily need it, they're the villains, but it would have been nice just to get inside of their heads more and understand, like, okay, this is why they are part of the Overtakers. It would have been nice to get, but that's just me. The time we do get with the Overtakers is really good. I just wish we had more of it because I find it really interesting. Coming to the final thoughts here, I really do enjoy this book as sort of the end point of the main series. Everything gets wrapped up, everything's more or less resolved in a very satisfying way. The Keepers have really accepted their positions as the defenders of Disney, and it is a really good sort of end point, but it also isn't a complete end point. Like I said in the prose section, the ending sets up the next series of books, which I really like. The story isn't over, and I will get to those book reviews eventually. The next couple of books in the Kingdom Keeper series are some of my favorites of the entire thing. So I'm going to give Kingdom Keepers Insider a 9 out of 10. Alright guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Please do not forget, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you enjoyed all of this content. Again, like I said, if you guys have book recommendations you want me to do in the future, please do not be afraid to leave those down in the comments. Also, down in the comments, if you guys have read this book before, do not be afraid to leave your own reviews on it. I would love to discuss the book with you. So, now that the Kingdom Keepers series is finished, I will be doing a ranking the video for all of the books we've covered in the Kingdom Keepers series. So, make sure you stay to the end of that video where I will debut what book we will be reviewing after that. Till then, have a great week, and don't forget, keep on reading.